Hey there, Foxy gamers! Welcome to Planet Coaster. I decided to try out something new today. Because I'm not doing the top 10 coasters anymore, I still wanted to do something with Planet Coaster. I'm not this, like, crazy, awesome, creative, let me use this window as 200 different types of architectural pieces in an object like Silverette and many other creators. But what I can do is art. So that's what I decided to do here. And you can see that I started out trying to just make this pixel Genji with the cubes themselves, and then I was like moving them one by one, and I'm like, that is a very stupid idea. It's going to take me forever to do that because I have to line up each and every individual cube since they don't actually snap to each other as scenery objects. So what I decided to do instead was make one giant blueprint that is 40 by 50 cubes, which is the maximum 2000, and then I called it my pixel canvas, and then I can just duplicate that and, you know, set it side by side because most of the time what I want to do is going to be bigger than 40 by 50, but it will still end up being less than 2,000 squares just because it's not a full square space. There will be pieces that get deleted, as you'll see later. If anybody else expresses interest in wanting to do something like this themselves, let me know and I will happily upload that canvas to the workshop just so that you don't have to go through the trouble of making it yourself. But it really isn't too big of a deal since you can just like duplicate rows of things. But yeah, just let me know if you want that to be available to you. So there's a couple things that I wanted to make sure I did before I dove into giving this a shot. First of all, the main color that I'm starting with is the color of what I want the character to be. Like the majority of like the color that you see on Genji is this color because, you know, the less amount of work I can make for myself, the better. And the other thing I was doing was I had an image in Photoshop on my other monitor, and I would go into Photoshop and I drop the colors of that image, and then I would copy the code of the color and paste it into the color palette in Planet Coaster. And you can see me doing that several times throughout this video, especially at the beginning. And once I have the colors set, then I can just use the other ones that are existing in my park, and I can use them as recent colors, and I don't have to continue doing that. I think in the future, what I want to do is sort of set up a color palette at the beginning where I just have a group of cubes that are all of the colors that I'm going to use on that particular design, and that way I don't have to keep going back and forth between Photoshop to do that. The other reason I recommend having an actual image to go off of, whether it's one that you've drawn yourself or that you found on the internet somewhere or whatever, you really have to have an image to go off of because there's no way to actually draw in Planet Coaster. You can only, you know, place these objects and change the colors. And as you can imagine, it would be a huge nightmare to make the outline of this character and then not have it the way that I want and have to, like, quote, erase my work. And it's not as simple as like erasing in Photoshop. It's, you know, like clicking every single cube, as you can see me doing throughout here, minus a few times where I want to change a whole selection of cubes, and I can save a little bit of time by clicking and dragging that way, but that's not very common. So you definitely want to have an image to go off of that you're basically just copying and looking at another monitor. And that's the other thing, like, this is much easier if you have a second monitor. And if you do want to do something like this and you don't have a second monitor, then, you know, you could just print off the picture onto a piece of paper if you have a printer. Or if you have a mobile phone, a smartphone, you can, you know, bring up the image on your phone and just sort of set that on your desk. That's what I used to do before I actually had a second monitor. And that isn't the greatest, but it still works better than like alt-tabbing all the time to see your other image. If you really want to plan ahead, you can also throw a perfect grid over your image in Photoshop or whatever program you're using, and that way you can see exactly how many squares you want for something. I didn't do that with this one. I was just looking at the image and I was kind of guessing how many squares each little line was, and it worked out okay, but in the future I will probably put a grid over the image. It kind of reminded me a lot of doing counted cross-stitch back in the day. I've done counted cross-stitch my entire life. Don't know if you've ever heard of that before, but, you know, just go look up counted cross-stitch on the internet, on Google, if you haven't heard of that before, and you'll be like, oh, yeah, that basically looks like pixel art, but with string. And that is exactly what counted cross-stitch is. The funny thing is, if I would have actually thought about counted cross-stitch as pixel art when I was younger, oh my gosh, I would have like gone completely overboard with like designing all of these images for characters that I wanted to make the pattern myself and cross-stitch them. I don't know why I never thought about that in like the years past, but that's not a revelation that actually hit me until a couple years ago, and I haven't actually done counted cross-stitch in a while. But that is basically what is going on here. I'm counting the squares as I see on the image, and I am putting them on this canvas. Granted, it is a lot faster than actually doing a counted cross-stitch piece. If any of you have done that before, you know how incredibly time-consuming that is. But it's also a lot of fun because it's relaxing, and then you can have this tangible piece of art to hang up on your wall when you're done. I actually have a piece that I did a few years back that's hanging up in my living room right now, and I like it quite a bit. So when I get done with this image, I will go in and actually delete all of that negative space on the outside of the character, and it ended up being about 1,500 pieces. Actually, maybe 1,500 pieces exactly, now that I think about it. So I was afraid that I wasn't going to stay within the 2,000 character limit, but it ended up being okay. Now, if I do something like Diva, that might push out of the 2,000 character limit, and then I would have to have a second blueprint, or else I would modify the drawing a bit to make her fit within the blueprint limit. And yes, if I haven't mentioned it before, this is actually an image of the Genji pixel spray in the game of Overwatch, so that is what I used for this reference. I have actually created an original piece of art of Pixel Symmetra that I did, like, I don't know, about a year ago. Maybe some of you saw it, maybe you didn't. I do have a video of that too, of me actually doing the drawing process, so I will link that in the description if you care to see it, and I might actually do that piece of art that I made in Planet Coaster sometime. Well, I don't actually know what the purpose of making this thing was, because it's pretty much just like kind of a statue thing that you could place in your park, or I guess if I had a whole bunch of characters, maybe you could make like a whole roller coaster ride out of it. I don't know. I just did this because I thought it would be fun, and I wanted to actually be creating something instead of, you know, making a video showcasing other people's works like the top 10 videos have been, and this is what I came up with. So if you do like this, and you want to see more characters, more videos, or if you have other ideas of other characters you'd want to see me make, it doesn't have to be Overwatch, please let me know in the comments. I would like to get feedback from you guys on whether or not this is a thing you would like to see more of. And of course, there is a link in the description to the Steam Workshop page where you can subscribe to this item if you want to use it in your park. And if you do, please take a screenshot and tweet at me or something. Show me what you did with it, because I'd really like to see it. Alright, well that is going to be it for today. Thank you so much for watching, boys and berries, and until next time, stay foxy.